Hey, what is up? Welcome to this featured Friday episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and you already know this, but gosh, am I so excited about today's interview because we've got an awesome guest on today's show. You are in for a real treat because I am joined by Erin Pohan. I can't wait to tell you all about Erin, and I can't wait for you to hear her brilliance in what she does. Erin is the owner of Upkeeping LLC. After 15 years in the public, private, nonprofit, and educational accounting spheres, Erin has found her heart in helping small business owners. So of course, it's a match made in heaven that Erin is coming on the show today. She supports entrepreneurs and already established small business owners in achieving their dreams by helping them truly understand accounting. She holds an MS in accounting from Liberty University and a BS in accounting from the University of Maryland. So she has lived on the East Coast, and I'm a good old East Coaster, so I always love seeing that connection. When she's not trying to make accounting more fun, which she puts in air quotes in her bios, and I totally love that. You're going to get a feel for her personality here in today's episode. Erin loves running, joining last-minute Ragnar teams, playing the violin, and spending time with her family boating around their hometown of Seattle, Washington. You're in for a real treat in today's episode. Let's dive in. All right, Erin, you heard the introduction, but let me officially say welcome to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you, Brian. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Heck yeah. Honestly, I'm excited. And I like that you even say in your bio, you make accounting more fun because, and obviously we're going to pimp your website so much because I want people to check out what you're doing because you are doing it differently and you make it so simple. So we're definitely going to point people to upkeeping.co, but don't go there just yet. Stick around and get a taste of Erin. Erin, I want you to take us behind the bio. You heard my introduction to listeners, but who the heck is Erin Pohan?
Yeah, so yes, I am here in Seattle, Washington. I started my accounting journey actually as a marketing major in Northern Virginia, and I wanted to be a sportscaster. I wanted to be Erin Andrews before Erin Andrews was a sportscaster, and I went in, started my marketing degree, and I took Accounting 101, and I was like, what is this? I love it. And all of my classmates were suffering and so bored, and I was pumped. And so from Accounting 101, I switched my major over to accounting and went full forward, no looking back. I happened to marry a Marine, and we ended up living all over the country, even all over the world. And I was really fortunate because I didn't have the traditional, Big Four accounting firm experience. Instead, I got to grow my experience from being in these small CPA firms, one in Yuma, Arizona, which really took me under their wings. One of the partners was a trust accountant, which if you know anything about trust accounting, most people don't. It's super complex, very rigid. And I just was able to gain so much experience from their work ethic, their level of detail, their professionalism. They took me in. I started as a receptionist. Once I got my degree, they hired me on as a bookkeeper, staff accountant, payroll specialist, and it was so great. We moved to Japan. I was like, what am I going to do? I just lost a whole bunch of time here. We were there for 3 years, but instead I decided to go for my master's while we were there. And so I got my master's in accounting and had a few babies there as well, and came back to the States and was hired on by a local firm in Philadelphia where we were living at the time. I walked in and I said, hi, I'm Erin, I want to work here, handed my resume, and started the next week as a staff accountant. So I've worked through tax seasons, I've worked through bookkeeping and payroll, and I found my love of working on the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month books of small business owners who, when they had a question, they could call me and I'd be right there, or I'd see them on a monthly basis to go over their financials. And it was just a closer connection for me. I'm a very relational person, and so I wanted to be able to talk to them more often than once a year when I'm handing over their tax return. So I think that's kind of the background. I ended up getting into a bit of the educational sphere when I was hired on by this military spouse supported organization who worked with publishers and universities to create subject matter expert content for them, whether it was test banks, supplemental information for textbooks. And I was able to create a course for University of Colorado and work with really high world-renowned publishers on their test banks. So that was a really great way to educate about accounting, which I've really incorporated into my Upkeeping business as well.
I love that. So the only way to make accounting more interesting is by throwing in test books as well. And
No, but by being able to break down those test books to say, this is what you need to look at.
I love that. And that's going to form a lot of the basis of our conversation today, because the elephant in the room is the fact that most small business owners especially think that they can ignore accounting until obviously something painful happens, then they can't ignore it anymore. It's kind of like health, whereas if you don't focus on it today, you're going to be forced to focus on it years from now.
Brian, do you know how many direct messages I received last Christmas Eve and Christmas from frantic business owners who had realized it was the end of the year and they had not touched their books?
Yeah, so let's go into that. What happens when that's the case? So if I'm a small business owner, let's face it, we've got Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur listeners all across the globe, over 150 countries of entrepreneurs tuning into us right now. And probably most of them, Erin, I'm ashamed to admit, for their sake, are ignoring their books. What's the problem with that? Why do we care about accounting as small business owners?
Okay, so the number one problem I would say with ignoring your books until tax time is you will inevitably lose out on business-related expenses that you can deduct from your taxable income. And as a small business owner, you are most likely really pinching your pennies, making sure that you can afford things for yourself or your family. And to lose out on expenses means you're going to end up paying more in taxes, and you're going to have less money to do the things that you love, to focus on the dream that you created the business for anyway. So I think that's the biggest setback for business owners who wait until the last minute. The other thing is, if you have a lot of transactions, you're going to lose out on a lot of time. Inevitably, you're going to be losing sleep thinking about all the work you still need to do, or the maybe tax filings that you haven't paid yet that are starting to become delinquent. So there's just a lot of things that as an accountant we are able to focus on and keep on task for our business owners, and the business owners can then just go back to focusing on what they love.
Yeah, I love that. Obviously, as a small business owner myself, I do know all the different hats that we're forced to wear. And it's something that I particularly love about your work. So from the second I landed on your website, which I'm going to remind listeners, it's upkeeping.co. And the first thing that stood out to me as a fellow entrepreneur is I saw it's written in big, bold text, accounting should never be the reason that your dream fails. And you even wrote there, after all, bookkeeping wasn't your focus when you dreamed of launching your new app, your new church, your new wood carving business, whatever it may be. And so I want to talk to you about that, because a lot of people have probably never worked with somebody like you. What are the advantages of that? And especially, we've already heard about your expertise. I want to hear how you take that expertise and how it actually fuels businesses' growth so that they can grow faster, they can go farther.
So bookkeeping is not sexy. People don't start a business to focus on the daily transactions that come in and then putting them into accounts that help them make sense of their business finances. And so that's where someone like me comes in, whether you're connected to an accounting software such as QuickBooks Online, which is what my firm primarily works within, or Xero, or there's so many different options. Most small business owners just starting out keep everything in an Excel spreadsheet. The goal for that is you want to make sure you are tracking your income and all of your expenses, which I know I touched on, but I feel like that's the piece that most business owners miss, is making sure that they are capturing all of their expenses. For the most part, they may receive a 1099 from their clients at the end of the year telling them exactly how much they were paid to claim for their revenue on their tax return. But the expenses are the biggest thing that I feel small business owners miss. So a bookkeeper will come in and most likely work within an accounting software system such as QuickBooks to make sure that all of your transactions are categorized where they need to be. And do it on a timely basis, which is huge, because whether, I know in Washington State, there are monthly, quarterly, annual reports that our business owners may be subject to. So you want to make sure you're not falling delinquent on your returns. But more than that, as a business owner, you want to know where you stand financially. You want to know, how much money did I actually make last month? Not last year. Last quarter, maybe okay. But last month, you want to know. And if you can get it to how much money did I make last week, even better. Because the more financial information you have, the better decisions you can make. Can you go out and purchase that large inventory order? What happened when you purchased that last inventory order 5 months ago? Did you see revenue return from that? What about the advertising, the ad, Facebook ads are huge right now. Is that actually generating more revenue in the subsequent months? So paying attention to those items will allow business owners to have a better understanding of their finances, make sure they're not digging a hole, and also you got to pay yourself. How can you pay yourself if you don't know what you're making? So that's really what I do. And when I work with my clients, my monthly retainer clients, I do all of the books behind the scenes, but then I take the time each month to meet with them, and we'll have a monthly financial check-in where we review what's been done for the last month, take a look at the present position, answer questions, but really explain those financials for those clients.
Yeah, and one thing that really stands out to me about your approach, I think that your approach, I'm excited, genuinely. It's so rare that I'm as excited as I am for listeners to go to somebody's website, but
about bookkeeping, I get it.
Yeah, no, genuinely, like the second I landed on your website, because obviously whenever we have guests on, like I love going deep into their businesses, and from the second that I saw your approach, it is so different from all the other bookkeepers out there, and we'll dive into some of those reasons why I feel that way. I genuinely feel like you understand entrepreneurs, like real small business owners. But another thing that stood out to me is you wrote it very simply: better accounting equals better business decisions. And already I'm hearing some things from you that, working with as many entrepreneurs that I do, interviewing, people who have 6-figure businesses all the way up to 8-figure businesses have come on this show. And one thing that I always see is the difference between successful entrepreneurs is that they're never, and this is a UK phrase, they're never penny wise, pound foolish. I see it so frequently with small business owners where they're penny wise. They'll save those pennies, those dollars every single month. But then when it comes to the bigger things, the pound or the dollar, they're foolish. They're not willing to invest money in right ways to know how to make more money. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that they don't know where the dollars are coming and going from and to. And so that's why when I look at your type of business, I'll call out right now, one of the real strategy things that you do, which I think is brilliant, is your one-time cleanups. It's a one-time fee where you basically say to small business owners, hey, if you can't afford or you're not ready for a monthly retainer to have an accountant on your books and helping you grow, let's go in there one time and let's talk about what's going on in your business so that you have that additional clarity so you can spark that growth. Do you want to talk to us about that sort of approach that you take with these small businesses?
Yeah, I actually really enjoy the accounting cleanup projects that I've had the opportunity to work on. The great thing about those is I do get to leave that business owner with a lot of educational moments. In fact, at the end of those engagements, I prepare a report of what I did to get their books to where they need to be. And then I leave them with actionable steps for them to continue on, and then tips, helpful tips, always related to their individual industry, because there's just so many different bookkeeping tips on, e-commerce, versus a service-based business. So I try to lead them with, these are, your state's filing deadlines so that they can have that as well. So it's not necessarily just about what I cleaned up, but how I can set them up for success moving forward on their own. So even though they might not become a monthly retainer client, I set them up to be a DIY business owner doing their books and feeling confident with what they are able to accomplish.
Yeah, one thing that I love doing here on the show and that listeners constantly say is the reason why they tune in 3 days a week to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast is that we do give these real life examples. And Erin, I know you've got such a diverse client set. I'd love to hear some of these actionable takeaways that when business owners got your perspective, your expertise on their side, they could realize, well, holy cow, I completely missed that. I didn't even see that existed, and help them move forward.
Yeah, I was hoping you would ask this because a part of my expertise is setting up business owners with, if they want to take on DIY. And I would say the number one thing to do is make sure you have a dedicated business account. And I feel like a lot of small business owners miss out on this crucial step because they feel, I need to go register for an EIN now before my bank will allow me to have a dedicated business account. Even so, you can set up a separate checking or savings account within your personal bank account and just make sure only business-related transactions are flowing in and out of that account. Separating your personal from your business expenses is the number one step for success as a small business owner who is trying to do it themselves. Time and time again, I run into business owners who have mixed personal with business, and they end up usually having to hire someone or pay their CPA a lot of money to go through those bank statements and figure out what counts, what doesn't count. And if you can just set up that dedicated account, business or not, you can track everything related to your business income and expenses. The other thing I would recommend for small business owners, it doesn't matter if you pay monthly for an accounting subscription or if you use Excel. And I say that with the caveat, you need to put the time in to make sure your entries are being recorded somewhere. So if you're using an Excel spreadsheet, it's a great idea when you first set it up and set it up to your personalization, exact likings. But if you're not using it and you're not updating it, it's going to be worthless to you come tax time until you get it caught up. So paying for tax accounting software, I recommend, QuickBooks, I think the cheapest plan is $25. If you do an Excel spreadsheet, I would recommend carving out time on your calendar each week, preferably 20 minutes each week to enter your expenses and your income. Of course, if you have that dedicated account, it's so much easier for you to either connect it to an accounting software or have one place to go to input all that information into your Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, really good advice there. And it's funny because I remember when I started my first business and I was 19 years old, Erin, I was terrified. I was still living in Boston. I was in college, actually. I was terrified to go to my local, I think it was a credit union, and open a business checking account. I felt like huge waves of imposter syndrome, that I needed to be making so much money to be doing all these things, that I needed to be at some level of success or legitimacy before I could open business accounts. Talk to us, which brings up the topic of time and when in the cycle should this happen. I want you to talk to Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur listeners and talk to them about when is the best time. If I haven't even made $1, should I be thinking about accounting? If I'm already crossed 6 figures, should I be thinking about accounting? Where and how does accounting fall into all the different stages and cycles of business?
Yeah, so the moment you start making revenue on a side hustle, on a business, and the IRS has very loose guidelines between what a hobby and business income are. So I would recommend looking into that first. But if you believe that you have a business or you are starting to incur expenses to create future revenue, that is when accounting kicks in. You want to make sure that you record any expenses it takes. I mean, because you're going to have expenses if you're product based before the product is even in existence. So start recording those somewhere, and as you begin to create these accounting transactions, you need to make sure that it is a place of within yourself, a place of understanding that accounting is a vital function of your business's success. So start carving time in your calendar. Like I mentioned, I would recommend, if you're just starting out, maybe once a month to make sure all of your transactions are recorded. And really, make that time dedicated to just accounting. Don't block off your calendar and then tell yourself, well, it was just the accounting, I'll get to it next month. That's where a lot of business owners, I feel, run into their issues, is they put it off until next month. But if you could do it at least once a month and focus on the previous month. So I recommend, and for my clients, I typically have all of their books done by the 10th to 15th of the month after the previous month, so that way we can review that month in entirety. And we do that because most credit card statements don't close until mid-month. So I want to make sure we've got everything entered, everything reconciled, and we're looking at the entire story of what happened that previous month. So if you're a business owner, I say just on a month-to-month basis, take a look at it, and when you can get there, or when you start making more revenue and your expenses are starting to really matter and your decisions are starting to really matter, get to a place where you can look at it weekly, have financial meetings weekly, and really understand your cash flow.
Yeah, Erin, as you're saying that, the analogy comes to my mind that I once heard from my good friend Nat Harward, who's been a guest here on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast, and he always uses the analogy of dirty dishes, in that if you let dirty dishes pile up in the sink for a week or 2 weeks, gosh, good luck trying to clean that mess up. Whereas if you stay on top of the dishes as they go into the sink, it's so much easier. And I'm hearing the same thing from you accounting-wise, and it's something that, you're right, it is easy for us as entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small business owners to say, I'll put that off until next week. But that's when we get that pile of dirty dishes. And I think this is the perfect time for me to bring up something that I so love about the way that you do business. And it's something I love getting into with my podcast guests, is I always ask them, what's your zone of genius? What's something that you're really good at? And Erin, what you told me when I asked you this is something that is so near and dear to my heart, because you said, I bring peace of mind to solopreneurs. I want to talk about that peace of mind, because we've talked about, from a cut and dry perspective, it's easy to talk about expenses. It's easy to talk about logging transactions, but talk to us about that. You called it the vital business function of accounting, and how that brings peace of mind. Particularly, gosh, do I love solopreneurs. It's such a big part of our audience. So yeah, talk to us about that.
So the majority of my consulting clients come to me because they're losing sleep on the fact that they haven't been keeping up with their books. Here in Washington State, there are the filings that all business owners need to file, whether they're service-based or sales-based. And so most of the time, and I feel like this is relatable to all solopreneurs everywhere, the thing that really keeps you up is, oh my goodness, how much money do I owe and to who? And just that dreaded tax time and not knowing where you stand and how much money you're going to have to fork over. And so I feel most of my peace of mind moments come from talking to small business owners about, okay, well, let's see how much revenue you've brought in, how much expenses you've incurred, what's that bottom line? Okay, let's look at that, and let's determine, do you need to make estimated tax payments? Okay, let's figure out what those might be in relation to just your business income Obviously, that gets more complex when you have to factor in personal taxes and whatnot. But just looking at it from the business standpoint, if they've made double than last year, we could say, yeah, you might need to make estimated tax payments. But if they're in a growing phase where they're incurring more expenses than income, then they may be at a loss for the year, and they may not need to be paying the estimated taxes that they thought that they were owing so much on. I always encourage them to work with their CPAs or their tax accountants on those numbers, but I can help at least from the business standpoint. Most of my business owners here in Washington State, when they called me frantic, it turns out they are service-based, and so they thought, oh my goodness, I don't have to pay sales tax, but why am I getting the sales tax filing form? I haven't been saving any money. I haven't been collecting from customers. And in Washington State, we have like a B&O and sales tax on our forms. B&O is a standard tax for all businesses here in the state. And so they see that, they freak out, they don't do anything about it, they lose sleep, they finally contact me, at the deadline, and we go through it, and 9 times out of 10, these small business owners are under the threshold of having to pay anything. And so all that stress and all that worry was for nothing. They file an informational return with no money due, and I'm able to walk them through those steps so that they can feel confident in knowing, okay, I don't have to pay anything, and I've got backup, someone telling me that I don't. So those are most of my peace of mind client moments that my clients have experienced.
Yeah, I love hearing those, and I love you sharing those with us, because those are the harsh realities for so many business owners. I think all of us entrepreneurs know that April feeling when we see the bottom line number of a check that we have to write to the IRS. It's never fun. And what I'm hearing from you, and Erin, I will admit, it's even a good reminder for me to hear from you here today. It's just, if you're on top of it, there should not be surprises like that in your business. All of these business decisions should not only be planned, but they should be intentional. You should be on top of them so that you understand those. And we've already talked about your extensive history within the field of accounting, from working at different CPA firms to obviously your educational background to your experience in different industries. But we haven't talked about the one thing that I'm really excited to get into in this part of the interview, which is talking about you, because you are also an entrepreneur. You are also a business owner. So I'd love to hear from your perspective as a fellow entrepreneur coming on the show. What are some things throughout your own entrepreneurial journey that have surprised you? What are ways that you've experienced growth? I want to hear about those insights.
Yeah, it's really fun because I work with entrepreneurs and I am an entrepreneur. So a lot of times we might have the same struggle that's not accounting related, whether it's, social media marketing or mindset. I have a few dear clients that I went on a women's business retreat in Mexico with earlier this year to just really focus and grow our businesses. While I am their accountant, I am now also, their friend and their peer in the entrepreneurial mindset. So that's been really awesome. I think the biggest thing for me within the first year of really launching Upkeeping was working on mindset and letting go of limiting beliefs. Realizing how it is not scary or as hard as I thought to actually gain clients. Realizing that rejection doesn't hurt nearly as bad as I thought it did in my head. And I would say it's just been a joy. It's so fun to, I'm an accountant, okay? So I use the other side of my brain. So I'm able to have this creative outlet to, do my Instagram marketing or like ideas and blogs within my business. So it's good. I get to use my whole brain in this whole capacity.
Yeah, it makes me so happy to hear from service providers and experts like you in your given field that you're also one of us. And to me, that's something that I think stands out so much about your work, is when people check out your work, they'll see immediately that you do understand it because you are one of us. So I love that. And one of the questions that I always like to wrap these interviews up with is, and it's very broad, Erin, so there's no wrong way to answer it. And I love seeing all the different ways that guests take this question, but I do want to ask you the question of, if you had one piece of advice for a beginner entrepreneur, what would it be?
Okay, so one piece of advice for a beginner entrepreneur, besides getting your dedicated bank account, I would say would be to figure out what your limiting beliefs are. Figure out what past experiences might have held you back and what might continue to be holding you back from reaching your dreams. And don't limit yourself with your goals.
Yeah, it's really sound advice. It's obviously near and dear to my heart. You've said the word mindset quite a few times in this interview, and I do think that that's one of the underrated elements of the entrepreneurial journey, which is why 1/3 of our episodes are Mindset and Motivation Monday, because it is that important. So you guys heard it from Erin herself about really identifying and honing in on those limiting beliefs, and take it from Erin. She's worked with all different types of companies in all different industries, as well as her own company. So Erin, I really enjoyed this. I do want to talk about, as we wrap this episode up, is that you talk about, and this is something that I love about your service offerings that you and I have talked about off air, is that I love how you do have that blend of one-time services. If entrepreneurs have never had an accountant like you look at their books, look at their strategy, look at how things are going, doing a diagnostic checkup on their business, then you do that one-time service. Or you can do the monthly retainer-based, hey, you want someone in your corner to stay on top of this for you. So I love the fact that you do that, and I love the fact that one of the things we talked about is that people can also try a hybrid. If you've never worked with an accountant before, go for it. Reach out to Erin. So Erin, I do want to open the door to you and the stage to you to let listeners know where the heck they can learn more about you, about Upkeeping, where they can start working with you, and where they should follow you.
Yes, so I tried to stay really on brand here. You can reach me by email, Erin at upkeeping.co. So that's ERIN at upkeeping.co. Instagram is upkeeping.co. And my website is upkeeping.co.
Yes, and I always tell people that success leaves clues. You definitely want to follow Erin on all the platforms that you can find her. You can find all of those links, a link to her website, a link to her Instagram in the show notes or in the episode description, wherever it is that you're tuning in, whether you're on the podcast app or on Spotify. Go check out her website. Go see what she does. Reach out to her. If you've never done this before, take her up on that one-time cleanup and diagnostics. If you want to follow her on Instagram, I promise you, I actually also love her Instagram because it's beautiful, and it is, every time she pops up in my news feed, a good reminder that, hey, this is important. It is a vital business function. So Erin, I absolutely love what you do. Upkeeping.co. Go to upkeeping.co. Scroll down wherever you're listening to this episode and you'll find the link there. But Erin, otherwise, thanks so much for coming on to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you so much.